Remember, value a lescent in appearance. The woman stepping off the plane is Alyssa Tudor. She is the founder and CEO of Tudor Renewable Ventures, a New York-based company. The company installs solar panels in underserved communities, bringing electricity to thousands of families who previously lived in darkness. Today, Alyssa has just returned from a major investment forum in the Middle East and is preparing for a short business trip to Europe. The private jet, funded by investors, is used for international development projects. According to the company's policy, every flight cost is reinvested into solar projects. As the plane lands and comes to a stop, Captain Brian Carter, the head pilot, steps forward with his crew to greet the passenger. But Brian looks at Alyssa suspiciously, tailored suit, designer bag, and high-class confidence. He thinks to himself, another gold digger flying around on investor money. He doesn't hear Alyssa on the phone say, "Yes, once we install panels on House 218, the orphanage will have free power." As Alyssa steps off the jet, Brian walks up and mutters under his breath, but just loud enough to be heard, "You're nothing but a gold digger." Alyssa pauses, clearly stunned. She calmly ends her phone call and turns to face him. She doesn't raise her voice. She looks him straight in the eyes and says, "Have I done something to offend you? I can explain my company's work if you'd like." Brian looks away, arms crossed, feeling uneasy, but still clinging to his assumptions. Alyssa opens her carry-on and hands him detailed documents. Contracts, NGO certifications, financial reports, and impact photos showing over 5,000 families across Central Asia now enjoying electricity thanks to her foundation. Around them, crew members shift awkwardly, realizing the misunderstanding. What Alyssa doesn't know, Brian's brother recently lost everything after falling for a woman who exploited him financially. Since then, Brian has distrusted wealthy-looking women, especially ones tied to investors. His accusation was emotional baggage, projected unfairly onto Alyssa. Fighting back tears, Brian has said, "Why yes, I'm sorry. I took an oath to treat every guest with respect. I judged you without understanding your missio." And Alyssa's still calm, lies. It's okay. I've heard worse. But if you're willing to listen, I think we can both learn something from his. In a VIP lounge, Brian shares his brother's story. Alyssa listens patiently, then tells him about how her own ideas were dismissed when she first started, being laughed at by investors for dreaming too big. They bond, strangers from different worlds, united by struggle and growth. 1 week later, Alyssa and Brian co-host their first event together in Mead Hills, Colorado, a remote town that had lost electricity when its coal plant shut down. Her company installs solar panels on 72 homes there, and Brian volunteers to help, personally nailing down panels on rooftops. A crowd gathers as children watch Brian work. An elderly woman, WH, whispers, "That's the first time I've seen a pilot in uniform climb." AL, Adder. Brian smiles, sweat on his brow. That evening, by the new lights, two boys whisper, "One day we yell, I do T. His two." In early 2025, the White House awards Alyssa with the Millennium Impact Award for Clean Energy Outreach. On stage beside her, Cap, Tane Br, Ian Carter. Interesting fact, she was the first female private founder to win this award, previously only given to politicians. In essence, large NGOs. They launch a new initiative, Light Flight, a volunteer program where retired pilots teach kids about aviation. And Renee, Wobble Energy. Real stat, many retired pilots experience post-career depression. This program Ave them Erpos again. The first success story came from Texas, where a boy who once studied by candlelight is now accepted into MIT. CNN films a documentary, From Accusation to Elimination. It opens with the same infamous photo, Alyssa stepping off the plane while Brian GLA. Residential beside her. Within 2 weeks, the video had 72 million views and was picked up by Netflix. It tells a story of prejudice, growth, and unlikely friendship. In a local school SPE. Heck, Alyssa says, "Sometimes, harsh words are the sparks that ignite change." Our story proves that grace and openness can turn strangers into partners and bring HT to thousands. Brian now gives talks in flight schools about accountability, humility, and leadership. No one calls Alyssa a gold digger anymore. No one sees Brian as just a stoic captain. They are both ambassadors of hope and change. Their foundation now spans 23 countries, and the Light Flight program is being adopted by aviation academies worldwide. Alyssa reflects one evening. Had he not said those words, maybe none of this would have happened. Brian laughs softly beside her. What started as conflict ended as purpose. And together, they prove one thing. The human heart, when open, can light up more than just homes. It can light up the world. Part 17. The Light in the Rain. It was raining in San Jose, Costa Rica, when Alyssa and Brian arrived for their next project. The goal? To bring power to an entire school tucked into the mountains, where children had been studying with oil lanterns and flashlight batteries. As they stepped off a jeep, one teacher ran to meet them with tears in her eyes. "We thought no one would ever come this far. You are the first." Alyssa knelt and handed a solar-powered lantern to a little girl whose name was Mariella. The girl clutched it like a treasure and whispered, "Does this mean I can study at night now?" Alyssa smiled gently, tears in her own eyes. "Yes, you can dream in the dark, but now you'll read in the light." Part 18. Brian's silent turnaround. That evening, Brian stood quietly by the installation truck, watching the local men and women help his team raise solar panels on school rooftops. A young boy asked him, "Are you the one who flies the big planes?" Brian chuckled. "I used to, but now I help people take flight in other ways." The boy beamed and said, "Then you're still a pilot of hope." Part 19. The Letter from a Stranger. 2 weeks later, Alyssa received a handwritten letter. No return address. Just one line written in simple script. "I was once homeless. You fed me. Now I teach science." She remembered. That day in Detroit. That man with a beanie, quietly taking a bowl of rice from her hand and saying nothing. She had forgotten the moment. But he never had. That night, she framed the letter. It now hangs in the headquarters lobby with the words beneath. Even unseen kindness can start an unseen revolution. Part 20. A World That Watched. The From Accusation to Illumination documentary was now being shown in schools, colleges, and leadership seminars. One clip went viral. Brian's voice trembling. I looked at her and saw a stereotype, but she looked at me and saw a second chance. Everywhere they went, people lined up not for autographs, but to thank them for proving that change is real and that forgiveness can rewrite a future. Part 21. A Silent Apology Goes Global. One morning, a woman in Germany shared a video of her apologizing publicly to a fellow colleague she had misjudged. She used the hashtag Gold Digger Moment, reclaiming the insult into a badge of growth. The hashtag exploded. Within 48 hours, over 1.7 million people posted their own hashtag Gold Digger Moment stories. Of judgments made, of people misunderstood, of moments that turned into transformations. Part 22. Legacy Beyond a Lifetime. Alyssa stood in front of the UN Climate Assembly a year later, addressing world leaders. The greatest renewable energy isn't the sun or wind. It's the belief in people. She received a standing ovation not because of statistics, but because her words reached something deeper, the tired hearts of a cynical world. Part 23. The photo that started all. And there it was. That old photo. Alyssa walking off the plane, phone in hand. Brian standing beside her, arms crossed. Once used to mock her. Now printed in textbooks titled, When Bias Meets Bravery. It became a symbol for institutions, NGOs, and even corporations, reminding leaders, never judge the mission by the outfit. Part 24. The Final Flight. Years passed. One day, Brian prepared for his final flight as captain. Before takeoff, he called Alyssa and said, "It all started with one wrong word. But that mistake brought me the greatest chapter of my life." Alyssa replied, and that mistake became the beginning of thousands of new stories. As his plane lifted off for the last time, It carried on its side a new emblem. Globe showing Europe, Africa, airplane sun. The symbols of earth, flight, and light, their legacy. Part 25. The Girl with the Lantern. Many years later, in a university in Costa Rica, a girl named Mariella stood to give her graduation speech. She held up a tiny, now faded solar lantern. This light was given to me when I was 7. It's what let me become who I am. It came from a woman who forgave judgment and a pilot who chose humility. They didn't just bring power to my village. They lit the fire in my future.